The evolution of creative communities that evolved from Africa to the Americas, that were deeply spiritual in their beliefs, inherently creative, and not rooted in the values of material wealth, human greed, or excessive emphasis on individualism, have given incredible life to our world's creative arts. But to appreciate the enormous creative innovation, we must also lean into the hardships, the history of dehumanization, and the cause and effect of difficulties as they ignited the artistry. Otherwise, we fail to respect and honor the legacy of the art. Africans and their mixed cultural descendants have modeled assets, capacities, and values rooted in an enormous capacity for creativity, community values that are essential to building a peaceful and equitable planet, and unparalleled capacities to embrace and endure hardship, all needed arguably now more than ever. All right, so Preston, if you would just tell us a little bit about your kind of like the early years, the way you were raised, what happened over the course of that, and kind of both the difficulties and the challenges, and what led to your creativity.
No one has ever asked me those type of questions before, and I definitely appreciate the question because it gives you cause to reflect on your life and take assessment and so forth and so on. And I was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York City, to a father from his people from Paramaribo, Surinam, and his mother's people from Barbados. And on my mother's side, she's from Trinidad. Mother's side is Trinidad. Mother's father's side is Tobago. So I grew up in a very strict West Indian household, and as a kid, and my father was a very interesting man because his family, for the most part, they were born in the jungle. They came from nothing. And when the ones that came to the United States and the ones that went to Holland became very prominent citizens, blah, blah, blah. My pops, for example, was the second Black man to have masters in statistics. When I was a kid, I'd see his books and it'd just be a bunch of numbers. And I think, what the hell? Why would somebody sit and read a book of numbers, right? Anyway, my mom's was a school teacher. A lot of her brothers and sisters were school teachers and all that kind of stuff. But as I said, in our household, in the old West Indian fashion, children were supposed to be quiet, and we were always in the yard. We always had a yard. I lived in New York. Then I went from 3rd grade to 5th grade. I think it was 4th grade. I forget, to Trinidad. So I lived in Trinidad for a couple of years as a little boy. Came back to New York. My parents split, and then we moved to Baltimore, which I hated. I had a funny accent. I have an unusual last name. So people always say, "Oh, you're not really Black." Couldn't figure that out. That's when I started to play trumpet, and I got involved with a man named Mr. Pender, Kenneth DeLeon Pender, who I'm very deeply in debt to my whole life. He literally took kids off the street and put a band together, and he'd run down the alley, catch a kid. "You want to play a homeboy?" Oh, and catch him and bring him home, and "You're gonna play trombone, or you're gonna play whatever." So we had I had a band, and I had an opportunity to play professionally at 12, 13, maybe 14 years old, with Frank Foster, Roberta Flack, Lionel Hampton. We did a commercial for Coca-Cola one time. I played in the section, behind the section for Lee Morgan, Stan Getz, and I got a chance to play with professional, real jazz cats as a little boy. Of course, he listened to jazz at our house. We only heard calypso music and jazz and classical music, but most of the time it was jazz and calypso. We heard Saturday used to be, we heard calypso music. That means you had to get up and work. That means you had to get out in the yard and tear it up and do whatever we had to do, whatever. So my father, one of the things he used to have me do as a little boy is we would listen to albums, and we would bet a nickel. I don't have no money, right? But we had to bet a nickel, and I had to tell him who was playing what instrument. And I had to tell him why. Well, who's that playing? "Oh, that's Paul Chambers." "Why is that Paul Chambers?" "Because and I'd probably make up something because I didn't know what I was talking about. It's the music.
Do you remember your first calypso? Do you remember the first calypso that you learned to play?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Charlie Parker's Little Suede Shoes. But that's the first song I learned on the piano that I can kind of like, I mean, I haven't played
Calypso roots. Yeah.
Yeah. See, and of course it appealed to me as a kid because, the music and so forth. Also in Queens where we lived, I live right across the street from a very famous calypsonian named Lord Nelson. So I call Lord Nelson Papa. Matter of fact, I got to give him a call this weekend. And he's still performing. He's like 80-something years old. He's still performing. So across the street, I'd go to his house, and he was a Yoruba priest. So I grew up in the Yoruba tradition of a lot of spirituality. And we would go over there, and, I grew up under what they call Shango's tent. I grew up in Shango's house. So, but they, Mighty Sparrow and all this kind of cats, they used to come to the Shango tent, where they come to, Papa's house, to Lord Nelson's house. His name's Robert Nelson, or he's known as Lord Nelson. So I grew up right across the street from him. Calypso may not been a world music, so to speak, but for us, it's everything. Yeah. So you go to Trinidad, you play something else that's like, okay, we listen to it over there. And then the next thing is a Calypso,
Eventually, you went into the military.
Yeah.
So what was the transition into the military? And then specifically, with all the kind of difficulties you went through in your transitions with mom and dad and with their, with their separation.
Was going in the garden. My pops come home unexpectedly, and they didn't take the trash. I put in the trash, and I'm thinking, ain't nobody's gonna see him and come home, whatever. So, pops comes home and he smells a fish. This is what he said: "You threw my fish away. You need to get out of my house." So I got kicked out of the house. So eventually, I'm walking down the street. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I had no clue, absolutely no clue. So I go to the Navy. They were closed. Go to the Air Force, they go to close. Go to, Marines, they were closed. Go to the Army, they were open. So I joined the Army. But anyway, I ended up going to Fort Carson, Colorado. We used to call it Fort Khartoum. I ended up going into a special forces unit.
There's no doubt that over the course of your childhood, and then particularly through the military and whatever, you went through an awful lot. You went through a lot of hardship and a lot of difficulties, but it also informed your ability to be creative and not necessarily to conform and to be yourself. So now let's move over to Germany where I met you. You were in the military when I first recall, and I remember you were probably one of the most creative people I'd ever met, because you would be sketching on sketch pads like crazy. How do you think some of that fed your creativity, or do you think it fed your creativity?
Most definitely. I mean, it definitely offset. I've always drawn, even when I was a little kid. Me and my brother, if we were mad at each other or glad at each other, or we wanted to bribe each other, we'd always say, "I'll give you a piece of paper. Like, you give me that donut, I'll give you," because him and I were always drawing. So we drew. That drawing and music definitely offset a lot of unpleasant things in my life, because right now in my life, let's say when I went to service, for example, I have a lot of music. I always had music in my head. And sometimes when I was in a really bad situation, I would have this phenomenal music in my head. And listening to this music got me through those situations, even with my father. So little by little, when I always had art. I always was able to draw, reasonably well. When I was a kid, I'm a left-handed person, basically. But my father forced me to learn how to use my right hand, because West Indian culture, you don't do things left-handed. That's like, why? That's just how it is. Or, maybe African or whatever. So, when I was a kid, I used to draw with my left hand, and he, little by little, he forced me to draw and write right-handed. So for a long time in my life, I would draw left-handed, but I would write right-handed.
Now, let's go into it. Show a little bit. I want to, go into some of your music here.
Right.
So let's go into. We'll play a piece, and people will be able to hear your left and right hand are like completely independent of each other.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead.
My left and right hand was always. I'm gonna say this way quick. Have always kind of fought each other, because there's many things that I can only do left-handed. Something I can do right-handed. I can bowl with either hand. I can bowl a strike with either hand. I can throw darts with either hand. But I can't play basketball because I can't figure out which hand I should lead it. So that causes like a little confusion in my brain. So
okay, good. So let's prep this then. So we were working together in Germany, and somebody offered us the opportunity to try to do a recording for UNICEF. This was a collage of Persian, Greek, German, American, I don't know who else was in it, and then of course you. These are two of your compositions, little tiny snippets of the composition. Wow. We'll go ahead and play the composition, and then I'll let you reflect on it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Won't you stay away? Or don't you know the carnival? The sun is way. The sun is shining. The girls are smiling. Till my day I love she hit it. She be my queen. Not tonight. Or won't you stay away? Or don't you know the carnival? The sun is way. Play mass. Play mass. Play mass.
Years, but I can tell you basically what it comes from. The first part of the song, To Not You Not, I have a friend, my best friend when I was in the service, his name was Rodney. And Rodney was a jazz head like myself, and he's from Americus, Georgia. And he had a really beautiful sister named, no, he says that somebody in his family, they used to call him Not, To Not You Not, and what's the other one? Because it was three of them. So I kind of wrote the song to him right after we got out of jump school. When we was on road marches or anything strenuous to get me through, I always had music in my head. So I wrote that song to my buddy. Tonight, don't you say, oh, wait, tell him. And now he wasn't in Eclipse's music at all, but that was just me. If you, the only thing I can say, if you can saw what I was going through at the time and me coming up with that music in my head, is completely different. So that all circled back. I remember we got out of jump school, and I remember I said, "Yo, Rodney," I said, "Rodney, I made a song for you," and he was like, and he liked it. But so then, I don't know if you want to talk about it at all when we first met, because to me that was really interesting too. So I used to sneak out to the music rooms all the time. We met in the music room, and I'm in there playing, and I remember it very well when I was playing, because I kind of remember what I was playing. I remember I was playing a C minor 9 chord. That I remember. I don't know why I remember that. But anyway, when you came by and you doubled back like 2 or 3 times, but when you was asking me all the questions, I thought you was crazy, because like, why were you even interested? And what makes you think that I can't play? Like, I mean, it was just weird to me. But I was just So anyway, we became friends, and you got me out of that unit, which was like astounding. Then under your auspices, I became a music and theater specialist, and that to me was like, I remember the whole time, like, how did I, like, you saw stuff in me that I didn't see myself, because I didn't see that myself. I didn't see
what I saw in you, and I still see in you, and I want to point this out as we move into the next piece, was this incredibly creative, eclectic person who did not draw lines between cultures or races or music styles. There was like, you just didn't seem to have any boundaries. It was like you were always kind of ahead of the curve, because it was, again, this ability to think independently. It's kind of a nonconformist. One of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King, Dr. King, if ever there was a disciplined nonconformist, to me, it's you. And this may seem like, oh, again, this is old music to you, but I remember at the time I was thinking, gosh, where's this coming from? So we'll go ahead and play the piece, and then, maybe you can give me any recollections about what you were thinking and kind of going through at that point. Okay?
Sure.
day by the road that guides you, calling you to pass this way. Ask a son who loves me to have a smile upon a smile. Take the words of wisdom as to her you're but a child. That's a song of knowing when you have a song to sing to all. No one is as special as yourself, you know it well. You're like no one else.
Well,
So,
you know,
any reflections back on kind
Yeah.
of that conflict between being this independent thinker and living in this other world
and listen to that song, since I haven't heard in a skiing years, bring some tears to my eyes, because I realized I was kind of writing it to myself, maybe,
Mhm.
and I don't know how to say it other than that, but you know, I've always had a lot of music in my head, and when I listen to that song now, I have the very clear recollection of probably around the first time I was formulating that music in my head was marching somewhere. I can see in my mind's eye where we're marching. Um, my first part of my military experience, first 2 years, from being kicked out of the house to being in the army, what helped me get through my early years in the military is being nothing. Is being nothing. I was nothing. I was just there, maybe as an observer. And so when I listen to that music now, I think I was coming out of nothingness.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's me writing music. So like
Nothingness was a survival technique, wasn't it?
right.
It was
So
like,
yeah, and like now I've always thought visually, and music to me is graphs. Graphs to me can be music. Colors, and it just that's just how it is. Especially like jazz. I hear the music, I see the colors, I see the story, I see the relationship between the musicians, I hear the universe, I hear the experiences, that type of thing. And I always love jazz in particular for that, because the stories and the colors are so rich and so contextual. You can to me, you see the textures, you see the depth of field, you see the you see the A to B, and sometimes stories may not make sense, but it's still a story nevertheless. So listening to that song brings back those memories for me going through stuff and just dealing with it, and
trying to work your way out of it, probably, huh?
and then trying to figure out who you are in it.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was just some eyeballs looking at what I was looking at and doing, doing what I was told. So when I got to Germany, now I was like, hey, I'm a person.
Yeah.
I'm something. I can make something. Okay, so I'm gonna create a song. But to me, like for instance, on a horse morning, that's very clear to me that morning comes some kind of way, and it can be brought by a horse of something. And it's just like a metaphor for whatever metaphor.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
A little bit. We went to South America, and I remember uh, we went to almost every country but Brazil and the Guyanas, right?
8 countries.
8 countries, yeah.
Yes.
And we were there.
For,
how long were we there?
We were there 9 months.
9 months. Okay. So, and I remember particularly we got to Paraguay, and this story I don't remember, sticks to me. And we were in the Chaco Road desert.
The van broke down on the way back.
You were laughing, and I was thinking to myself, I'm going to die here. I was like, because I had not had that level of hardship. I'd always had that kind of sense of privilege, like everything's going to be okay. Wasn't in the military, didn't have to kind of fend for myself. And I remember just, it didn't phase you at all. And I also remember every time we went, and whenever you saw people that were experiencing hardship, you immediately gravitated to them. It was almost like a magnet. And so as I listen to this music that you're now doing, the project that you're now doing, I see this incredible exchange of ideas. So how have you thought about other cultures and about people, and particularly why is it that you like have this ability to gravitate particularly to people who may have less or are less visible, or maybe have been marginalized by the history of racism and things like this? You have this incredible magnetic ability to go ahead and reach these people and then bring their influences in. Can you reflect on that just a little bit?
Sure. The best I can say is that in South America, I the thing that was noticeable to me is that the Indians, for example, more often than not didn't smile. And I used to think to myself, what can I do to make them smile or make them laugh? And also, I've always had like a kind of, I don't know how to explain this, but I've always had a deep thought about me being able to learn something from somebody who's unique in some regard. So, so when we were in South America, I'm thinking these are people that I have a deep affinity for. That's one. And I learned this lesson in Germany one time, just as a quick aside. One time in Germany, I went to this party, and I heard what I thought was a Mississippi blues singer playing the piano, playing some honky tonk, right? And I'm like, wow, who's that cat? So I introduced myself to the guy, and he was a German, and he was a German speaking guy. Didn't speak English, but he can sing Mississippi blues, and he can, so I asked him, so from that experience, I realized, I said, okay, this guy has a deep affinity for Black people from Mississippi. And one quick story that he had told me, which I thought was interesting, he was a photojournalist, and he said he's one of the people who broke the story on Hans Christian Bernard, who did all those operations on the Open Heart in South Africa. And come to find out, he had practiced on like 300 African people before he went to the first white person, and to be able to do that. So he's the one that broke that story. But the thing that was striking to me, the fact that he had a deep affinity. Here's a German speaker, speaks no English, but he has a deep affinity for Mississippi music. So when I went to Delta music, so I went to South America, I found out that I had a very deep affinity for these Indian people. And I had a very deep affinity for the people who were impoverished, because part of me was like, what can I do? What can I do to help these people? Because I don't know what to do, but maybe if I can just make them smile or laugh. And it was like that was my impulse to meet these kind of people, to gravitate towards these people. Because it's like, I'm like, it must be something maybe I can do something. I don't have no money, I don't have anything, but maybe if I can make them smile or make them laugh. And that was my compulsion. My compulsion was just to and then secondary to that, my compulsion was maybe they can tell me something that maybe I can learn something from them. And I know one thing that I appreciated about New York as a kid, and always appreciate about New York. In New York, you see every flavor under the sun. It's normal to see a Chinese next to a Black, next to Korean, next to a Russian. That's normal. When I was in elementary school, I went to elementary school with Russian kids from Dominican Republic, kids from Poland, to me, that's normal, looking at people, seeing all kinds of folks and going to the house to eat and going to this restaurant and go, that to me as a New Yorker is normal, right? I realized that outside of New York, that's not normal. So that is just kind of bizarre. But going to South America, it said, these people, a lot of times they were just so beautiful to me. I'm like, wow, and I'm always thinking, what are they about? Maybe they could teach me something. Maybe I can make them laugh because they don't smile or laugh. So that was my compulsion,
that I play all the time when I need an empowerment anthem, and it's called Just Grin. And so let's go ahead and play that. And then we'll play a little piece of that, and then we'll go ahead and kind of come back and talk about this project now. Okay.
All right. No problem.
Okay.
Just grin. Just grin.
So there it is. There it is. It's like I'm just listening to that. I just can't help but grinning. And I remember, again, only when you've been through challenges and difficulties like you've experienced, are you able to go in and find, humor and connection and whatever when other people are like walking by. You don't walk by. Tell me a little bit about how this project came about, how you kept in contact with these people that, were earlier part of your life,
Well, there's a guy named, who's my brother as well, Ali Neander, and he goes by the name Ali Neander. And about close to 3 years ago, he calls me up. This is before COVID. And he says, Preston, I want to do a remote album of all of your material. Wow. I said, okay. And so I start compiling some material. Now, Ali is a formidable guitar player. And he was my first blonde friend, in Germany and all that kind of stuff. And, we were very close. When we were in Germany, we was foot to foot, like my mother would say. So we were good buddies. And we had a band together that was called Jive Alfredo. So we put together that album. I did all my keyboard tracks remotely, and they replaced all the parts, with live musicians. And one of the things that I'm kind of honored about from a musician standpoint is that there was a number of things on the rough recordings that I might play the bass part or the guitar player or whatever. And I put just stuff in just how I thought about it. I'm just, I use a professional music writing program, Pro Tools and Logic, to play all the parts, the drums, knowing that it's going to be replaced. But quite a few things that I put in there that I thought was going to be, you do it your way. This is just a template. They kept it close to what I did, which to me is like, wow. They didn't try to completely change it. They use a flavor of what I did. The album will hope to be released in June, and we have like 15 songs probably, so it's really going to be a double album set. And I wrote the music, compiled the music basically, knowing I wanted it to be challenging, I wanted it to be fun, I wanted it to be multicultural, I wanted it to be a nod to this, a nod to that. It's like, it's like a gumbo, it's like it's like having curry and a white sauce together.
Yeah. So,
I don't care about that kind of stuff.
So let's talk about this because I've had a chance now to listen to most of the tracks. Well, everyone you've sent me a number of times, and to me, it is actually a reflection both on your life. And I think also on the way you lived your life. I mean, this concept of the oneness of humanity and the respect for all humanity and all races as being equal but different, and the ability to engage them on their terms, to self-determine, and then to be able to allow ourselves to be the sum total of that, which is kind of a created entity, a Creole of sorts, So let's move on into another piece, and just to kind of show that kind of fusion of elements. Let's go ahead and pick one of the pieces that you'd like to maybe talk a little bit about. We'll play a little bit and then let you give us a little bit of the backstory as to what kind of a Creole piece it is. In other words, what are some of the elements that you put into it? So do you have a favorite piece you want us to play?
Ellington's Sexy Prodigy.
Okay, good.
Right.
So let's play it from the track, and then let's go ahead and get a little bit of your feedback from it. Okay.
Okay. No problem.
All right. This is incredible because just reminding the audience here, not only is it an extremely creative composition, but remembering that everybody is doing this remotely, putting in their tracks without actually looking into each other's faces, and it's got that feel of a live recording. We have these suspended cadences where we suspend the time and then everybody locks back in, and it's not like they're locking back in like, oh, it's a mechanical kind of thing. They're locking back in like they're looking at each other and they're hitting the downbeats together. And so it's just an amazing collaboration. These are the fruits of absolute unity, absolute collaborative unity. So any thoughts? I mean, this is just a marvelous project. So I'm sorry I went on, but I was like, I get excited.
No, it's cool. well, see, for me, that song is me, but that song is because sometimes you write stuff and you write it for something, and then sometimes you write something kind of for yourself, and you kind of go, I don't care if people like it or not. That's what I'm gonna, I want to put that together. So, but that song to me is me trying to, and understanding that I'm a baby Duke Ellington. I'm a product of a lot of his music, and I don't put myself on his category at all. But I wanted to put something together that is my homage to Duke Ellington without sounding exactly like Duke Ellington. The thought I had to me was, what would be a modern day Duke Ellington that has another twist to it, that maybe a rock twist to it or funk twist to it, whatever. So, because I've always loved the idea of taking a concept and, it could be jazz or funk or whatever. And the thing I always appreciate about jazz music is that you can incorporate different types of music. And I've always loved folkloric music, world music. And I've always thought about how can I incorporate world music in, jazz or whatever. So, but this song, when I was putting it together, I said, okay, I gotta, and it comes from a challenge too, because a friend of mine used to say all the time, electric guitar and piano doesn't go together. Why not?
Yeah, who made that rule?
Well, he's like a funkster and all this kind of stuff. So I said, no, I want to write something that's acoustic piano and electric guitar, and they're both in their worlds. Ali is in his, hardcore, guitar world. I'm on acoustic piano world, but this is for Duke Ellington. So to me, it was fun to try to put together completely different concepts and then put them together and hopefully make them work. Yeah. And the thing about it, the first half of the song came from me just sitting at the piano one day. I like that. So that's the first word comes from the piano. The second half comes from me singing. Don't ding, don't be. And I wanted to make something singable and happyable, but still there's little things to let you know that Duke Ellington might have snuck in and threw a chord here and there.
Yeah, because so that is kind of a perfect tribute to Duke Ellington, because he had this incredible ability to live in the world of the majority culture, the white world, without losing any of his recognition of inequity and respect. He would always embed and put double meaning in his music, so that while people are dancing to Satin Doll or whatever, so that he could pay his musicians, at the same time he's making statements and putting in encoded messages and things like this. And that's the feeling we get from this music, is that there's a lot of encoding going on.
Yes.
There's a lot of kind of subliminal themes that reach back into your past, that reach back into Duke's past. Right. And that's that critical component of listen below the surface,
Yes, that's you said it very well, because in this song, for example, now this may not make sense, but this is just a thought that I had in the song. I wanted, one part of me said, I want to create something that's Duke Ellington-ish, but little high school kids in California like.
Let's go ahead and end with a piece of your choice. And before we do the piece, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about the inspiration. So what would you like to end with?
Wow. Maybe Firmente.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about the origins of that piece?
Firmente is Portuguese for finally, and sometimes I try to take a single basic idea and expound on it. And there was a and sometimes I might not even be going through that particular thing at the time, just whatever. But I was thinking about the situation that you might, let's say you want to be with somebody in a long, for a long time. You really like this girl or whatever, and then finally you and her are together. Mm-hmm. Now, why I was thinking about that particular day and who it is, I couldn't tell you right this minute because there's nobody in that realm or whatever. But when I first sat down to write the melody, it's my attempt to take folkloric elements and put them into a jazz, whatever world concept. I play with a lot of Brazilian bands, and they have what they call samba reggae, and they have, which is, if you translate that in English, it's like samba reggae. So they say samba reggae. So, but I always envisioned like these big, massive drums and then piano on top of it, because as being a piano player, I always think piano goes with anything, rock guitar, whatever, accordion, I don't care. So this particular song comes from half from me playing on the piano, figuring out on the piano, and half me singing, and and I added both of those elements together, and it's just a happy little song. And as I said, it's about Fiamente, Você e Eu, finally me and you.
thank you so much. I mean, thank you so much for enduring the hardships. I know it has not always been easy. The world does not treat artists with the respect necessary. You've had to do a lot of appalling gigs to keep yourself above the water just to be able to remain an artist. But the results of your artistry is bringing joy to everyone, and I can't wait until this album is released. Meantime, I'm just glad that we're back in contact, and I want to again thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, thank you, bro. I appreciate it. Thank you. I very much appreciate it.